What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of Back Your Play with Q. Rich Quinones here. Friday edition of BYP, hashtag BYP. Check us out on the YouTube channel. You can now find us as part of the Leon Media Network down in Miami, Florida. Just check them out online and go to the pods. Our NFL guru, our insider, our good friend Lloyd Vance, kind enough to join us on this Football Friday edition of BYP. We got last preseason, get it under our belt over this weekend, and then we get the countdown from 90 plus to 53, and then boom, we kick off the season. But in the interim, Lloyd, a lot of news going down, and as always, appreciate a couple moments of your time. How are you?
Doing good, looking forward to the start of season, but like a lot of these GMs out there, it's a busy time of year.
Yeah, I want to get to a couple of, I guess, the stories that have kind of been overshadowing training camp, preseason, and whatnot. And really, one of them, we start a little bit. We talked about the quarterback position and how now a lot of these young guys getting their feet wet. We saw Richardson last night, probably made a army of enemies with his little bird mock there with that Colts preseason win over the Philadelphia Eagles. But you saw the athleticism. You saw him make some plays. I'm interested to see what he does going forward his rookie campaign. But I bring it to Trey Lance because we talked about this. I thought going into that draft where the 49ers were at number 3, in my estimation, I felt the dominoes would fall depending upon what direction they went. I thought it was going to be a very intriguing draft pick choice, no matter what direction they went. It turns out it's Lance. They give up 4 draft picks. Right now, he's buried third on the depth chart in San Francisco behind Purdy, and Sam Darnold, the veteran now, is the backup. I mean, I know Lynch and company will say all the right things, but man, if you're this kid, you were the number 3 overall draft pick in 2021. If you want to sit there and say he hasn't had a fair shot at reps, so be it. He's been injured, banged up, inconsistent, okay. But man, now you got to go about your business and you have to act like a consummate pro while behind the scenes, San Francisco's probably trying to figure out a way, get you the hell out of town. So, I mean, this is amazing, right? You're talking about a number 3 overall draft pick. And this is a classic example of wrong player, wrong selection, wrong pick. And right now stands to be a bust.
Yeah, Q, and we see this quite often around National Football League where teams kind of reach for a guy and they get him and he's not a right fit. And I'm looking at the waiver wire now, as you're saying, everything's going to start changing on these rosters next Tuesday at 4 p.m. And, you know, there's a name that popped up. N'Keal Harry just got cut by the Minnesota Vikings. Another guy, former first round pick. He's with the Patriots, just did not fit in the NFL scheme, did not have the speed at the receiver position. And now he's on a wire. And you're kind of seeing with Trey Lance, he's got to play the good soldier here. He's got to keep his mouth shut, work through his agent, and maybe they can find a good landing spot for him. And that's if John Lynch and Shanahan, who's coach there, if they want to make a move. He could just stay there as a third quarterback and just kind of be a clipboard holder and insurance policy. But they've already paid a lot of money to him up front in his first couple of years because being that high draft pick, he got some money. But I don't think there's a big cap hit if they get rid of him. But in terms of trades, you always got to talk about that. There's value involved here. Whether it's Jonathan Taylor or whoever it is, it takes two sides to tango, and teams just are not going to trade to farm like they used to because they like to build through the draft and keep their own players.
Yeah, but you have to admit, and San Francisco's got to admit, truth serum, it was a bad pick. I mean, this kid's not stepping on the field unless Purdy gets hurt and unless Darnold gets hurt. I mean, that's pretty much it. It's just bizarre. You mentioned Taylor. I know there's some suitors out there. I know there's been conflicting reports that Indianapolis tried to move him to Miami. They said no to that. I mean, there's a bunch of teams, the Bears, Miami, Arizona. I'm seeing some reports and maybe some mock trades here with the Philadelphia Eagles. You give up a second round pick in 2024. You give up Penny. You give up Quez Watkins. So Taylor is another, it's a strange kind of situation because we know that the running back position has been so devalued. They talked about it last night. during the telecast of the Colts and the Eagles game. But that's just where we're at. I mean, I feel as though it's come out of nowhere over the last couple of years, and it's kept building, building, building. Now we look at running backs as, it's not a luxury. It's just an added, a little cherry on the top if you have a good serviceable back. I pinpointed those teams. You can give an offensive weapon or two to Fields. Arizona, what are you going to swap out Connor? And then you got the Eagles. Carolina, there's some talk maybe you turn around and you trade Miles Sanders, who you just signed, right? I mean, think about that. So if you're in Jonathan Taylor's camp right now, what are you telling him? Because again, man, if there's not a suitable option, right, then it's almost as though wake me up when something happens, because after a while, are you going to play? Are you going to fish? You're going to cut bait? I mean, I know you're trying to force your hand here, but if you're in Taylor's camp right now, what are you telling him?
What they're telling him to is it's not working. This holdout, this hold in. He's in camp. He's out of camp. My ankle's hurt. It's not hurt. We all know what it is. He wants to be somewhere else. And Jim Irsay, the owner with the Colts, he's not playing pool with him. He's just like, you know what? We're just going to ride this thing out. And yes, we've given you permission to go find a trade. But as you were just saying to Q right before I cut in, it's a situation where the position is so devalued, and they're talking about, oh, the Colts want a first round draft pick for him, and teams just are not going to give that in this day and age. We
Yeah.
talked about that Todd Gurley contract. That was probably the tipping point. He got the money, he threatened to trade and all that stuff, and he just did not live up that contract ever since. You're just not going to see it. Obviously, yes, you did see a trade with Christian McCaffrey last year, but that's a special situation because he's such a great receiver. He's just not a pure running back. And we know, Q, you talked about they're kind of part of the car now. They're not the driver of the car, They're not the bell cow like they used to be in terms of offenses. Offenses are all driven around the quarterbacks and the receivers first and foremost.
Yeah, since 2016, Howie Roseman has made 17 trades during training camp. So, think about that, right? I mean, everyone thinks he's kind of cooking behind the scenes and plotting. I mean, look, that offense is stacked.
Right.
You have to weigh risk to reward, right? Because again, it's not like Miami needs a running back. It's not like the Eagles need a running back. I mean, some of these teams that I mentioned, they have serviceable running backs. You don't need a 1,500 yard back to win a Super Bowl. We've seen it. You don't need 1,000-yard, 1,500-yard receiver. The diva receiver, the number one receiver. We've seen that before. I mean, look what Kansas City has done, exception to the rule, right? Because they have so many weapons in so many positions. But you really just look at the tight end and you make the case Hall of Famer with the quarterback, but then it's pieces around that puzzle, so to speak, with Kansas City in that offense. So, yeah, I get exactly what you're saying. I agree 100%. I just don't believe that, he's going to sit. I don't believe a lot of these players ultimately would do that, right? And then you stick within the NFCs. I thought the Giants made a really nice move for Isaiah Simmons. You're talking about a high draft pick. You only give up a 7th-round pick. And I know that he turned around. He said he wanted to play safety. He's not going to play safety. He's going to be used as a linebacker in Wink's offense or Wink's defense. Pardon me. I pulled this up. This is pretty impressive, man. So you got Dexter Lawrence, McKinney, Jackson, Williams, KT, Simmons now, Robinson, Olajari, Deontay Banks. You got that kid, Okereke. They've got some really good defensive players, the New York Football Giants do. And I think Simmons is a really nice move for them because you solidified a position that you basically needed some strength. You needed some depth.
Yeah, and we talked about in our last show, the preview of the NFC East, how the Giants, they have pieces on that defense, and this is another weapon that Martindale can kind of deploy. And Isaiah Simmons, a guy, even at Clemson, he was kind of moved around. They had him a corner, they had him safety, had a linebacker, and then the Cardinals just could not figure out how to use him. And just no disrespect to them, but they kind of misused Hassan Reddick when he was there. He came out of Temple. He was more of a outside guy, and they tried to move him inside, make him a tackler, and he's more of a pass rusher. So, I think with Simmons, Wink Martindale's going to find a position to put him on the field. He'll be an athlete. They're going to just put him out there with Thibodeau, and they say get after the quarterback. And yes, he'll be a little undersized, but he'll be able to make some plays, and he has a lot of ability. We talk about that top tier ability he was in
Oh
the
yeah.
draft. And then you got the cornerstone guy, your defensive tackle, Leonard Williams. Yes, he's not McDonald, but he is very similar. He is a game wrecker, and they build the whole scheme around him.
Listen, I think anytime you can acquire top 10 draft pick, top 10 talent, you're bolstering up, which I like the move. He's a versatile player, and you're sending a 2024 seventh round draft choice to Arizona. So
Right.
again,
Seventh round pick, third day. How
yeah,
many times they waste that?
yeah, and entering the final year of his rookie contract, right? Because Arizona declined the 5th-year option earlier this offseason. I don't like to use the word tanking in football. I think it's more prevalent and prominent in, say, the NBA. In football, guys are flying around 100 miles per hour. If they're being lax about it and lackadaisical in their approach, guys get hurt. But you look at Arizona, I feel as though they're tanking. I feel as though this is a team in total rebuild. I think they have buyer's remorse with the draft pick of Murray, with giving them that contract. I think this is a team that's ready to implode. Do you use that term tanking in football? Do you buy into it as much as we do, say, in the NBA, like what the 76ers did a couple of years ago?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's tanking. You see at the end of the season where, yeah, maybe they may rest some guys, and that may factor into standings and where teams are picking in the draft. But teams want to win in NFL. We see it so often where a very bad team pulls a shocker on a
Yeah.
very good team. I still kind of remember Kansas City uh, losing winning at home against a very good former Super Bowl defending team. So, it happens quite often that they're going to go out there, they're going to try hard, they're going to play hard, and the chips fall their way where they may. But when you look at that roster, Steve Cunningham did a very bad job in terms of that Cardinals roster. He was obviously let go, and they have a new general manager in there, trying to rebuild that whole situation with Gannon and that whole crew. And we'll see how they come along. But you're right, Q. I think they're starting to say they may have made a mistake with Kyler Murray, a guy who, yes, he's going to put up the fantasy football stats and all that, but he gets injured and he may not be the right guy for them. So, this is going to be a, quote unquote, rebuild season for them, a tear down, in my opinion.
Yeah, listen, coaches aren't mean, players aren't mean when they're evaluating talent and they're sitting there before practice or before games saying, come on, let's go out there and stink up the joint. Let's suck today. I totally understand that. But think about what the Cardinals have done. They made 3 trades the other day, right? You trade Simmons to the Giants for a 7th-round pick. You traded Josh Jones in a 7th-round pick to the Texans for a 5th-round pick. Then you traded a 5th-round pick to the Browns for quarterback Josh Dobbs and a 7th-round pick as well. So all picks involved are 2024. So maybe they are looking ahead. Now, from a betting standpoint, when you look at their win total and the unders, I still believe I would hammer the under. I'm not a big believer in this team going forward. All right, you got some injuries. If you're a Broncos fan, and I happen to know a couple of them, if you are a Broncos fan, I mean, think about all the injuries that the wide receivers have been suffering, and now you lose Judy, and I think it's the 5th wide receiver that they've lost, and we haven't even played a regular season game yet.
Yeah, and we know Russell Wilson is going to need some help this season. He had a downturn last season. Everybody's going to blame it on a variety of things, but he needs his receivers and his offensive line healthy. And then you got Javonte Williams coming back from very bad knee injury at the running back position. So, Sean Payton's there. He's supposed to be the guru, former Super Bowl winner, and we'll see if he's able to clean this thing up. But these injuries are not helping. Judy is a guy they definitely counted on for his explosiveness, and we'll see from there. The Broncos have a very good defense. If they're smart, they build around that defense and then have Russ hand the ball off to Samaje Perine, who's their backup running back, and hopefully get Javonte Williams back soon.
I know we talked about the AFC North a couple weeks ago, but listen, I watched that Steelers game. I mean, their offensive, this kid Pickett looks good. And I know when we were breaking down the AFC North, we always look at the growth, the maturation process from year number 1 to year number 2. He seems he's very right in control of that offense. Pickens is going to be a player. I mean, think about it. You got the P squared, right? You got Pickett to Pickens for the next 10 plus years. Do you believe this, this second year now for Kenny Pickett? Does he take that? Do we see the ascent? Do we see the jump now that we always talk about when it comes to the quarterback play? I want to see what they do in year number 2, year number 2, year number 2. Are we going to see it in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, it's real interesting, Q, because Matt Canada, their offense coordinator, is kind of on a hot seat, and I think this is his second year as well. And he's coming in there, and he's going to try to make things right, and he's letting Pickett kind of be more control of this offense, and you can see that. I watched a lot of that game last night as well, and he was 4 for 4 in that game. He had 2 very long completions, one to Deontay Johnson, who's very coming along. We've always talked about the explosiveness that he has,
Yep.
as long as he's cutting down on his drops. And then you talk about George Pickens, who I think can be that next Steelers receiver find. We see quite often with that franchise. So, this team, I think they'll be in the mix. This is a very tough division, as we know. All these teams can beat each other up every week, and Mike Tomlin, he wants to play conservatively, and Pickett can do that in terms of he'll hit the slants, but also he'll hit a keep long drive here and there. But I'll keep the score down and then let that defense with TJ Watt and those guys pin their ears back and go after quarterback.
All right, we kind of started the conversation with the young quarterbacks. Let's kind of close it on this Friday edition of BYP. There's one team out there, one NFL team that has yet to name their starting quarterback for week 1, and that is the Houston Texans. I mean, what are we doing here, right? Like, is it? I mean, let's get some clarity. If you're CJ Stroud, are you thinking to yourself, hey, is this my job? I mean, you drafted me. Look where you drafted me. Is it you going to give me the keys to the castle, so to speak? D'Amico Ryans declined to name the starter in week 1 against Baltimore. He said, quote, in everyone's case, we'll see who earns what, and you'll see our starters in Baltimore. He declared that a quarterback competition going in training camp between Mills and Stroud. We saw it. Boom. I mean, typically when you run first team reps, right? First team offense, when you're exclusively running, that kind of says you're going to be the de facto starter. Is this a little situation of gamesmanship here by D'Amico Ryans, or feeling out the young quarterback, kind of testing, to see that thick skin, so to speak?
Yeah, D'Amico is going to be, he's a veteran player and he former player, and he wants these guys to earn it. So we all know CJ Stroud eventually is going to be the quarterback of that team. Does he want to throw him right to the wolves that first week? We'll see. Davis Mills has been there. He knows the playbook. But if it's a pure competition between the two, I say CJ Stroud's going to win that position. And Q, you can never not factor in the fact that he's taken number 2 overall, and that they want to have a new beginning with the Houston Texans. They were so downtrodden, one of the worst teams in the league last year, and I think he'll be out there eventually by at least the 3rd week or so. But I think maybe Davis Mills has that first start in week 1, and then they gotta go from there. But the thing is, Q, we got to look at game prep that first week. So whoever's taking his first team snaps right before that game 1, that'll give us a clear indication who it is. But maybe Stroud, he's kind of wait on him, but I don't think it's going to be more than 3-4 games. We always remember here in Philadelphia, Doug Peterson started ahead of Donovan McNabb when he was a rookie. Donovan McNabb did not get in there until week 5, 6, and Peterson went out there and took his lumps. So, and we've seen that around the league before, but that doesn't mean that Stroud's not ready. Everybody I talk to says that he looks good in practice. He throws a very nice long ball, but there's a lot of work to do there. We talk about a rebuild, a tear down, and that's what's going on with the Texans as well.
Yeah, good point with Dougie P and McNabb. I was covering that Giant Eagles game. McNabb came in for the second half. Tonight, Lions, Panthers laying 4.5. Pats, Titans laying 3. You got the Chargers and the 49ers, 49ers 7.5-point favorite in a preseason game. And then tomorrow night, what's interesting, the Giants and the Jets. So we'll get our look at Aaron Rodgers. I thought Daniel Jones, pinpoint accuracy, brilliant that first series. See if maybe we get a series or two with him tomorrow night. I mean, they look offensively, they look good to go. But again, I think this is all eyes will be on Aaron Rodgers. We're going to put every throw, every movement, every body language under the microscope, even if he doesn't even throw the ball and he hands it off 3 times and they do a 3 and out. But be that as it may, this is what you want, right? I mean, their defense is going to be very good this year. But I still maintain, and we'll talk more about this before the season starts with our predictions and whatnot. I don't know. I get it's like when you're a kid and you think you've been good all year long for Christmas, right? And you're expecting every frigging gift in the world on your list. And then you turn around and you got 3 there, right? Because, at the end of the day, you're a little pain in the ass. And mom and dad were like, no, not this holiday season. It's like, I feel as though we're building this up so much where everyone and their mother are saying the Jets are, boom, here you go, AFC East, AFC Championship, going to the Super Bowl. And you're almost setting yourself up for what could be a classic disappointing letdown. Now, that's just me. And I know I hear from Jet fans and like, well, second, you got the little blue helmet in the background. I'm being objective. I told you, I didn't like this move, but I understood that they had to make the move if Aaron Rodgers was out there. I'm just not sucked in drinking the Jet juice like everyone else is.
Well, Q, I've been following it and looking at this more than anything, and paper doesn't win anything, and there's always going to be bumps in the road for every team. And the Jets, what can't go wrong will go wrong. They've had the longest playoff drought of any team in the National Football League. I think it's 13 seasons since the last time they made the playoffs. So, they have to have a lot of things go right. And this is a very tough division, as we talked about. And then you start talking about some interesting things in terms of the roster. Corey Davis just surprisingly
That's right.
retires the receiver. You got Alan Lazard, who's banged up at the receiver position as well. And then that offensive line that we talked about over and over again. How has that come along? Mekhi Becton, who they really need to come back from his knee injuries over the years, has not looked great in camp. And then you just got, Dwayne Brown, who's an older guy. Can he get it done? They have Billy Turner coming over from the Packers. They just a lot of moving pieces with that offensive line. So, yes, it's the big story, and everybody's talking about hard knocks each week. And, Aaron Rodgers is a great elixir, but he's 39 years old. So, a great story. We're going to have to see in terms of this season, though, how they start. We've talked about their schedule over and over again. Yep. They host Buffalo right off the bat. That's going to be a great divisional game at the Dallas Cowboys. Then they have the Patriots, who are always a big rivalry. Then they host the champion Chiefs. That's really going to tell us. And then they're at Denver. That's a tough road trip. And then they come back to host the Eagles, and then they finally get their bye. So, that front schedule is not going to help them, and we're going to find out real quick who they are. And let's not forget Salah. His record over his 2 seasons, I think it is like 12 and 22. So he's not a winning coach, and he has to prove it. So a lot of people are expecting a lot from this team, but they got to prove it on the field.
Saying all the right things, but again, proof is in the pudding, right? Let's see what you do on a Sunday. But it'll be interesting to watch. You'll get some eyeballs tomorrow night. All right, NFL cuts Tuesday, 4 p.m. What's it? You got to get to 90 to 53?
Yeah. So it's just one big cut, obviously. The practice squads, I think, are up to 12 to 16. I can't remember where they are. But there's a lot more guys you can put on a practice squad, move around here and there, even veteran players. But, you want to get that core 53 players and know who's going to be where heading into week 1. And it's going to be here before you know it. It's going to be the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Lions, and they'll have the big kickoff show and everything. But these GMs have a lot of work to do, and hope springs eternal all around the league. But it's going to be interesting to see if some of these teams can take that next step.
Yeah, we'll get a lot more clarity Tuesday when we do our Tuesday edition of BYP. Well, we got some good preseason games tonight. We kind of did a BYP reround. rewind, and then we've got some preseason games tomorrow, but we'll kind of recap everything and cut down day Tuesday on Tuesday's edition of BYP. All right, my friend, always appreciate you jumping on board. Don't forget to follow Lloyd on social media as well. Always kind enough to join us on a Friday edition of Back Your Play with Q. Enjoy the preseason slate of games this week, and my friend, we'll talk on Tuesday.
Forward to it. Thanks for having me on.